Now, when we think about coach pantheons and we think about greatness in the coaching position, of course, we think about Nick Saban. Of course, we think about Bill Belichick. We think about all that. But one person that gets left out. Now, obviously, his resume is not as extensive as a Bill Belichick or a Nick Saban. But one coach that usually gets left out when we talk about great coaches in the history of sports is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, I mean, he's a Super Bowl champion, NFL 2010's all-decade team. He won a national championship. He won he's two-time AP Poll national champion, two-time Rose Bowl champion, two-time Orange Bowl champion, four-time Rose Bowl champion, two-time Orange Bowl champion, seven-time Pac-12 champion. And he won Coach of the Year, Home Depot Coach of the Year, and AFCA Coach of the Year, both in 2003. Pete Carroll was the architect to those great USC teams, those Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush teams, Troy Polamalu, I believe, those teams. He was the architect. From 2001 to 2009, USC was different. Like, different. And it was mainly because of him. And even in Seattle, he brought a lot of that grit, a lot of that charisma, a lot of that energy, a lot of that winning formula to Seattle. And help build the Legion of Boom, help develop a Russell Wilson. Of course, you had Marshawn Lynch, and they ultimately went to the Super Bowl, or won the Super Bowl. They went to 2. And that is where this conversation gets a little interesting. Obviously, the end goal in sports every year, the end goal for your organization, the end goal for your franchise is to win a Super Bowl or win an NBA Finals or win a World Series or win a World Cup. That's the goal. And we look at we look at Pete Carroll very differently because of that second Super Bowl and how it ended and how the right thing to do was right there. You zigged when you should have zagged. We don't need to talk about the last play, but we know. Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, the Legion of Boom, Dan Quinn, Marshawn, they should be 2-time Super Bowl champions. But they're not. And I think the issue that Pete Carroll ran into is that he was too much into the times. That Pete Carroll kind of you know what? Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, Pete Carroll zigged when he should have zagged. There's no doubt in my mind that Pete Carroll is a great coach. I mean, again, the resume, the proof is in the pudding. There's no doubt in my mind that Seattle would not be a Super Bowl champion if it wasn't for Pete Carroll. There's no doubt in my mind that someone like Russell Wilson wouldn't be as critically acclaimed before obviously going to, or his last 2 years in Denver, but I don't think Russell Wilson would be as critically acclaimed if it wasn't for the teachings and under the tutelage of Pete Carroll. But it seems like Pete Carroll tried to push the envelope just a little too much. He tried to speed up that improvement, or he tried to do things that haven't really seen much success. For instance, you can say now in hindsight that it was a good move if you want to, but giving up on Russell Wilson for Geno Smith. And Geno Smith was great last year. Do not get me wrong. And Geno Smith has been much better than we thought he would be. But this year was more of a come to the realization of who Geno Smith really is. Like we say, a water always finds its level. And Geno Smith is good, don't get me wrong, but he's not. I think that there was kind of a case with the Seattle Seahawks is Pete Carroll needed Russell Wilson the same amount as Russell Wilson needed Pete Carroll, because both of them haven't seen much success without each other. Now, Pete Carroll obviously more than Russell Wilson, but it's relative. And you know what's funny? A lot of the endings to Pete Carroll's tenures, whether that's the Patriots as a head coach, whether that's USC, whether that's the Seattle Seahawks, they've all kind of, whether that's the New York Jets in 1994, they've kind of ended the same way. Now, again, I know this sounds like hate but it's not. Pete Carroll is cemented in greatness. But again, you never want to be too fast to change. You never want to be too slow, and you never want to be too rigid. And it seems like Pete Carroll was constantly too fast for change. Like, oh, brother, there, we're not there yet. And I think I will say this. I think the Seahawks, you can tell that they respect him, obviously, because they didn't say that he was fired. They said they're mutually parting ways, and now they're going to make him an advisor. I get that because Pete Carroll is still a really good coach. And the last thing that you want to do is have him go to maybe a rival, have him go to a different team and see success. Now they're looking at you like, especially after, the last 2 years, which they weren't the best years, but they were better than we thought after obviously giving up Russell Wilson. But you can just tell this wasn't no mutual thing. Press conferences tell you a lot. Moves after moves tell you a lot. Like, you can tell Bill Belichick, Bill Belichick maybe wasn't happy to go, but you can tell he wasn't like tripping. Like, the light or the candle has hit the end of the wick. It is what it is. You can tell he wasn't upset. He wasn't tripping. Like, hey, I've done what I've done. I'm going to continue coaching somewhere. Just won't be here. Pete Carroll was hurt. You can tell Pete Carroll. There wasn't no mutual about it. You can tell they fired Pete Carroll. They just tried. They just didn't want to embarrass him in the public and say, yeah, we fired you or we part ways. But you can tell Pete Carroll, hell, he even said it. He was fighting to remain the head coach, and he still has a lot of head coaching in him. He still has a lot of energy in him at 71. The most energetic 71-year-old I think I've ever seen. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.